minus 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Launch Sequence podcast. Boy, oh boy, things are happening. Servermeshing is working in public testing. We've got 3.23 out on the PTU, and there's just a general buzz right now in the community. So I thought I'd bring on Beyond the Verse, a friend, another podcast host in the community. I'm gonna let you plug your stuff here in a little bit. Promise you.
Sure.
You promised me you would. And also just, you got a lot of hot takes. I feel like this is a good show for hot takes, so I thought I'd bring this guy on to talk a little bit about where 3.23 is, what's going on with it, when it might actually come live, and if it's been any good. Thank you for joining me, Sulyce. How are you doing?
Absolutely. Well, first off, I'm blessed to be here. Thanks for having me. So far I haven't been egregiously wrong in my hot takes, but I'm feeling like this is the year that I lose a lot. So we'll get into that at some point.
You can't not lose if you're trying to make Star Citizen predictions.
That's
gonna
fair.
lose. It happens.
Yeah. No one's even close. I think this year is going to be pretty egregious. So
yeah, that's just how it works, dude. You think something's going to happen 2 weeks later, it's the complete opposite. But we love it.
Yeah.
That's why we're here.
Yeah. Or you get a random ship out of nowhere. They're like, "Hey, didn't know you needed this, but here's a ship we didn't tell you about."
Yeah. And I go, okay,
So
sure, why not? More ships. We like features though. And
Yes.
this show is basically going to be all about features because there's nothing ship related that we are seeing with 3.23 except for the Retaliator just yet.
Yeah.
So like we're all features today, and honestly the patch that we have in PTU is not the full patch that we're going to have. So a lot of the stuff we say today is not only subject to change, it also doesn't cover everything that you're going to be seeing in the live game. But I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say about the Starmap, the interaction system, master modes. Oh boy, master modes has been, it's got the people buzzing.
it's a touchy subject,
As it always does.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so before we jump into things, this is your first time on the launch sequence. You joined me for the Citizen Central show. We had a good talk. And since then, I've been on your show. You have been a big part of helping us make sure this was continuing to go, getting our computer built, all this stuff. But I want people to hear from you. Introduce yourself. Let people know kind of what kind of content you're making and where you come from before we jump into things.
Yeah, I'll try to go quickly. So first off, I'm Sulyce, Sulyce. But I do a podcast called the Beyond the Verse podcast, and it originally started out kind of dabbling in lore and kind of what Star Citizen and Squadron 42 is. And then I discovered Paul, the astrohistorian, who's just doing it better. So I pivoted, and I started looking at other things. See a need, fill the need is kind of my thought process here. And what I hadn't found in a podcast platform was like the weekly news. If you were away for travel, if you were gone, like what is that short term podcast you can listen to get your fix, to get your shot, of CIG. Like when I was learning about Space Tomato and I was learning about the product you produce, it's forward looking. You're looking at 3.23, you're looking at 4.0 and 1.0 and when that's happening. So I wanted to fill a void or a gap where, you could stay up to date. You don't want to read the monthly report? Well, you can listen to the podcast to figure it out or to have that dialogue. So that's what I'm bringing to the table. Just quick kind of backstory. I've been podcasting for about 8 years, started with Elder Scrolls Online. I got very close to New World, helped with that production and development of New World, working at Amazon Game Studios. And so I moved away from lore and started getting really into the development at New World. And then it did what it did. It crashed. It's not really where it should be or where it needs to be. And so my friend Conniff, he was on episode 1 and 50. He introduced me to this thing called Star Citizen, and I thought it was Elite Dangerous when I saw screenshots, and I just immediately fell in love. Right, the tech and everything that they were trying to do beyond just pushing your mouse and pushing your keyboard. The rest is history.
What time was that? Like 21?
New World? Yeah, it was about two and a half years ago is when New World had launched, and it kind of sizzled out, right? Yeah.
It's interesting because I remember from my perspective, I'm not a fantasy gamer. I rarely touch fantasy games except for like an RPG. But but I remember that game coming out, and there was a big buzz in the Star Citizen community about it, not just because it was a new MMO and people like playing MMOs, but also it was, I think, the first major game that had been made on Lumberyard after Amazon kind of did all their stuff with it. And so it was a chance for people to see, oh, this is kind of what the engine can do. Even though at this point we can all pretty confidently say the engines are quite, like Star Engine is quite different from what Lumberyard is. Yes. There was a correlation there. So I remember hearing about it, and I remember kind of seeing from the outside that whole rise and then not so great fall. That's a bummer.
Yeah,
but
it is. It is.
That led you to getting introduced to Star Citizen.
It did. It did. Yeah. And so when I hit Star Citizen, I did what was comfortable. I went into the lore, like I said, but knowing that this was a completely different path that like any other game has really, taken on, I decided to fall in love in that direction. So a lot of what I focus on now is what you also focus on. And that's where you and I, our conversations jive so well. It's like we're looking at that technological advance. We're looking at what that implies to the game community, how it changes the gaming community. And we'll get into some of those topics tonight, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But those expectations of like, is it too realistic or can we gamify it with master modes? Right. That's $1 million question.
Oh, boy. Were you into space games or sci-fi games before? I know you talked about New World, but what else was there?
Yeah. So I did Star Wars Galaxy and SWTOR. So I guess, but that's, I don't know. I'm going to piss off a lot of people. Star Wars isn't really a space. It's not really a space game in my personal opinion. There's an element of it, but it's more boots on ground, lightsaber, Jedi Force kind of thing. So I don't know. I don't necessarily, probably not. I'm going to go ahead and answer that question. Probably not. Didn't do Elite Dangerous. Didn't play. What's the other one? No Man's Sky. Didn't touch that either. So this is really my first.
I mean, I'll say this. I ask a lot of people when they come on, like what games they come from. And most people don't come from like spaceship flying games. They come from games with a sci-fi or space-based background. So like Star Wars is common, Yeah. There are a lot of people who come from like my own background, which is like Halo. And it's like, okay, you went from the single player FPS, like defining of the single player campaign, to this crazy open space MMO. And there are so many stories like that of people just coming from completely different areas in the gaming industry to Star Citizen, because it's just got something that draws people from a lot of different things. And we'll get into a little bit of that today, I think. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I feel like there's something in Star Citizen for everybody. Like there is that FPS element, and there is the flying element, and there's a simulation element, and so I always love to ask people what their elevator pitch is for Star Citizen. Like if I were to ask you, like Tomato, explain Star Citizen in 2 sentences.
If you like waiting for a video game, you're gonna love this one.
100%.
Yeah, no, it's there are a lot of ways to, I think, sell the game, and that can be a benefit and a hindrance. There's a lot of, the interesting thing I've been seeing recently is, I think this is great, that how much people are focusing on single gameplay aspects. It's up until the last couple of years, it's basically been like, oh, this game doesn't even run. Like, why? I can't even stay on my spaceship. The arguments were about like super basic stuff. Now we're getting into things like, oh, is this getting balanced too far towards the aggressor when it comes to combat? Is this going to make FPS too easy? Like, these are good questions, and it's interesting to see how much people focus on their specific topic, almost to the point where it seems like they assume the whole game surrounds that topic. Whereas we're talking about, like, there are so many different aspects to this game that, like, at the end of the day, you can't put too much importance on any one part of it, can you?
Yeah, no, you're right. It's becoming a video game. And I think people's issues that they're taking up with this game is like that element of it's a video game. So I think at the end of the day, the argument becomes, how realistic do you want it? I honestly think that is the argument. So master modes versus a dynamic crosshair versus the thermal imagery and the user interface. Like, I think that becomes the debate. Is it too unrealistic? Is it too realistic? Mm-hmm. Do you want a simulation or do you want a video game? And that's a good place for a video game to be. That's a great place for CIG.
Let me ask you a question. One more question before we get into the PTU.
Yeah.
When you say realistic, would you say that's different from simulation?
So for me, and this is my personal like branding of the game, the more simulated, the more realistic. Like I want flight sim. I want to be able to hit 20 buttons in order to take off. Right. I don't want to hit like things fire up and then I just take off.
Mm-hmm.
So I love the simulation. I would love to see like changes made to looking down a scope. I want it blurry. I don't want the rest zoomed in. I want the parallax view. Like I want a simulation that is so realistic, but that's not like the general population. I feel like the general population wants that gamify. They want that ability to kind of quickly jump in, do things, jump out. And so for me, simulation and realism is the same. And then you've got like gamerfying, which is the other end of that pendulum.
When you joined in the project, what did you feel like the goal for the game was? Did it feel heavy simulation or more gamifying?
Yeah, I felt it was, and it still kind of is, but I felt it was very high simulation. Like it was impressive that you had to turn on your power, your controlling powers. I saw you on YouTube the other day managing, the power supplies for engineering loops. Like that piece, I feel like that is the CIG brand, and they want to keep that. But now you're seeing things like thermal imagery, master modes, right? You're seeing these other things that are like, okay, we understand that we need to make things more simplified or easier to jump in and jump out, for new players. Because right now the flight, the way it is pre-master modes, it's a huge learning curve. I might be preaching to the choir, but it's a lot harder than any other game to really jump in and do well.
I find it difficult to talk about the flight model because of just how much it's changed, how much some of it has in common with earlier flight models and what aspects of those people like versus don't like. It's a complicated topic, and I mean it's arguably the biggest one in Star Citizen. Most of us are flying spaceships around at some point, besides the star map. Because I will always say the star map's number one. Besides the star map, flying your ship is kind of important. Let's talk about the PTU though. In general, we'll start with master modes, but first I just want to start with the question for you. Is it worth the hype we've been having for the last few months? Like, it's shown up. How are the features?
Ooh, all right. So I want to bluff. Like the bottom line up front, yeah, it's absolutely worth it. If you're okay going through 318 again. So right now it's horrendous, right? The stability, it is very difficult. So when you first get in, the character customizer, it's super well done. It's a great experience to the point where you're laying down in bed and you're seeing the new user interface and the HUD. Like it's all a brand new.
What do you think of the song?
The what?
The song that plays during the character customizer?
Oh, I mean, it's good.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. The music's a big deal to me. I will always like anytime there is a song that is purpose built for something in a sci-fi game. I will always go back to the Mass Effect Starmap because that song like defined star maps for me. So
that's fair.
I'm curious whenever, because I feel like that's kind of what you're going for when you make a song and it's only going to show up in that one app. It's like, what do you think of it? Does it sell it? Do you think of the character customizer when you hear it? I'm going to keep asking people that.
Yeah. Well, the fact that I kind of stuttered at first whenever you asked, like, I don't know, I didn't really notice the song. I don't know. But yeah, it's a great experience. I couldn't even get out of bed though. And I think that is where that's where this conversation, unfortunately, will probably, take that turn. Is it was all beautiful. It was all great. I'm glad I had a beard in game now, but I couldn't get out of the damn bed, right? It took me like an hour to log out, log back in. So not to get into the, the negativity of stability conversation, but it is worth all of the new features. It finally feels like the 2012 game is a 2024 ready to go game. It actually looks and feels like a 2024 game.
You just had to give up your mobility for a beard.
Yeah, that's right.
That's all it took.
That's right. I'm glad I got my beard. Yeah.
I will agree from what I've experienced, it's god awful in terms of like just trying to be in the game, which is kind of par for the course with big PTUs, not necessarily big PTUs, but more PTUs with major updates. Now, I did originally in my first preview of this update, I completely the server crash recovery, the replication layer separation, just missed my brain. So I forgot that was going to be in, and that's definitely an excuse for like a really rough PTU. But if you took that away, are any of the other features actually running poorly?
So for me, the storage container or the item kiosks, those aren't currently working, and I don't know if they were supposed to be in this patch or not. Like those aren't working. But other than that, yeah, I mean the master mode experience, like flying, the short little stint I was able to fly, the EVAing is tremendously better. I made that comment on your stream yesterday. But that EVA is phenomenal. Honestly, I cannot wait for 323 for exactly that purpose. It looks like it's going to fix a lot of our heartache if we can just get into the damn game.
No,
that first
not
barrier.
Allowed. Not allowed. Yeah. That's the kicker with Star Citizen. They might take 14 years to make the game. It might come out and be great, but you can't play it.
That's right.
The game's finally done. You're not allowed to play it. It's just there. You just look at it. Love this box art. Let's talk about master modes. Let's dive deep into the details of some of these features. How are you feeling about this change from the little bit that you've gotten to play, but also from like the discourse you've been seeing surrounding it? Because I know you haven't been missing it.
No. There's a lot of drama there. I don't know. I'm going to oversimplify it. I'm going to oversimplify and say master modes makes it feel like a video game. It's going to make it more simple for you to pick up and be halfway decent. And so what's happening, what I'm seeing on socials is you have a discourse of like the salties or the sweaties that have put in 5-10 years to get really good. And they're really good with the current flight modes and they're comfortable. And that's how they want it to persist or continue. And they're basically taking that model and putting it on its back. They're saying, you know what? Let's change literally everything about the flight modes. And so I understand the discourse. I understand the sentiment on both sides. For me, who sucks at, and I'm very loud about it on my podcast, I suck at aerial combat. I just can't wrap my head around most of the physics. We'll suck together. This is just horrible.
We didn't come from spaceship flying games. There it is.
Yeah. That's, you can tell. So I welcome it because I suck. So I don't know. I don't mind the arcadish overlay. Like a lot of comments about how it looks like an arcade now. It looks like something you would see 5-10 years ago. I don't mind it. It helps me out. And honestly, it doesn't detract from my overall Star Citizen experience. And so for me, I welcome it. But my 2 cents.
Okay.
Yeah.
I am having a lot of fun trying to figure out there are diverse problems with master modes. Some people have problems with how the shields act. Some people have problems with the fact that speeds are separated. Yeah. And it's interesting to look at it from both angles and figure out, like, is there a solution that can solve everybody's problems, or do they have a lot of work on their hands to get out of this, or not out of this? I won't say out of this because it hasn't even been proven whether it works or not. Do they have a lot on their hands to balance this so that it works for the entire PU? What we're seeing right now is the first time this feature reaches the PU, which means they're getting it tested in a different way than they've ever seen, and a lot of new info is coming out about it. And I'm wondering, how is that going to affect the development of ship flight, combat, and all that stuff over the course of this year? Because they have to further diversify each ship now, right?
Yeah. I mean, their work's cut out for them. I don't envy them in this situation. There's over 160 ships, right? Not to count all the ones that are in the pipeline. So, man, dude, no, it's an undertaking, and you're never going to please everybody. and I don't know, that sounds like a billboard. It sounds like an easy thing to say on a podcast, but I think whatever they choose, the feedback that they're going to get from 323, which is going to be crucial because everybody's going to be touching master modes, not just the Avocati, not just those that are on PTU. Everybody's going to get their hands on it. So I think they're going to get a bigger breadth of that feedback. And honestly, I trust them to make the right decision, but there will be a balancing. There's going to have to be a balancing on what that looks like.
Yeah. I said that they would be trying to aim to fix all these problems that people have, but at the end of the day, they have a goal. They have a vision. They'll make tweaks, but they won't compromise on what they're trying to do for the sake of, you know, what problems people have. Yeah. I do find this, the one thing I that bugs me about master modes is it has my main problem I had with hover mode involved. And that was, I think it was before you joined in the project. Hover mode was basically if you dropped below a certain speed, your ship would automatically switch into a different type of flight. You had no choice of when this flight kicked in. And you know, people had their own problems with hover mode, whatever it might be. Let me know down in the comments how we just needed to get good. I'm sure we'll get to hear a lot of that. But for me, that was the biggest problem because it forced you to do something, right? It wasn't a system that you could kick in because you knew exactly when it needed to kick in. It was a system that the ship told you, hey, you need to do this now, so do it. And it was an arbitrary number. I didn't like that. I didn't feel like that was a Star Citizen way. And that's the one thing that I feel like with master modes, it kind of falls flat with me.
It's going back to?
Yeah. Okay. Because I know the balance would have been insane. But to include this sort of thing, the balance of whether your shields and thrusters were working or weapons were working or all that kind of stuff was working with the engineering gameplay we're also getting at the same time, seems like the obvious choice. I do wish they talked about why that didn't happen.
So talk a little bit about that experience since it was before me. Is that like, does it feel like it throws you into VTOL and you just have less control or less?
That's exactly. Yeah. Okay. So you would slow down and your ship would basically fly like a helicopter. It would turn into a helicopter model where all the thrust was modeled from the bottom, and you would tilt your ship to move in the direction. The problem was like, you weren't, man, I can't pull I have a whole video. I have multiple videos on my channel. I can't pull up the exact problems with it right now at the top of my head, but it was nuts. The thing would malfunction. I don't like it. Maybe it was a glitch. Maybe I did need to get good, but a lot of people got sent just careening into hangar walls because the system would like try to force you into one mode, but then it would glitch and it would freak out. And overall, they took it out of the game. They removed it, and John Crew came on to came on to Calling All Devs like a year later and openly said, this was something we wanted to do, but I don't think we did it the right way. And so ever since then, they've been working on the engineering system, the heat system, and control surfaces, which they showed at CitizenCon. And they're going to use that as the way to do hover mode in the sense that instead of getting locked to a certain speed, if you slow down in atmosphere, control surfaces won't keep you up. So your thrusters will kick in, but your thrusters might overheat. And that in itself is what teaches you to maybe be more careful while you're hovering. That's the Star Citizen way I know. And I feel like master modes kind of goes around that.
I can see that. You know, I can definitely see that. I remember that at CitCon last year. I remember seeing that. It's cool hearing the context or like the history of it.
It is it's a very cool feature. I tried to get Yogi to talk about it on the podcast a few weeks ago because I'm very excited for that. I think that's one of the coolest things is knowing that you have a mission, like a planet to go to or a moon. That planet's got storms, it's got heavy gravity, there's something up with it. And you make sure to take your ship with VTOL. And, you know, maybe somebody else has tried to do it and they didn't have VTOL, and you find their derelict crash ship on the ground or something. Like you get that feeling of, I made this choice. I succeeded in my mission for it because I know my ships. And I think that's kind of what they're going for with master modes too. It's just, it's hard to see. Yeah, I don't know. I
Well,
don't
that's
know.
encouraging. It's encouraging because I made the comment a couple of weeks ago. I wish VTOL had more of a purpose.
Mm,
Like there are times, like even in the Cutlass Black, there are times that I don't touch VTOL. Why? It's not really necessary.
not
Like
at
even when
all.
you're
Yeah.
landing and taking off. So that's interesting. It's interesting that it might have more of a purpose
Yeah.
with master modes.
We've been waiting for that. It's
Yeah,
the control surfaces that'll give it the purpose, and that I don't know when they're going to do, but that is
yeah.
exciting. So master modes, in your opinion, you like it? Sounds
I
like.
do. If I feel as though you fly better. It's easier to fly with master modes, in my opinion.
Okay.
It's smoother. Yeah.
I will be interested to see more and more how it affects bigger ships in industrial
Yeah.
situations. I think it's going to come down to how the shields work when they kick in, when they turn off. But also, there's like armor. There's just a lot of
Yeah.
stuff in the game that's not actually functioning that might make this all different in the future.
Yeah. 100%. Do you feel like they're trying to do too much with flight? I don't want to jump the gun and start talking about engineering or anything like
Well,
that.
no, no,
But
no. I'm ready.
is that
But
is that, okay?
um, I mean, there's it. It's a funny question because for the longest time, people have felt like there's just nothing in the game, right?
Sure.
I think there's reason to do too much with flight. There is too much, obviously,
Yeah.
but like you want to go kind of heavy in flight when you're playing a space sim.
Yeah.
So I think yeah, I'm also kind of weird because I think that I'm of the opinion that flying ships should be something that not everybody is doing. It's
Sure.
like it's actually kind of hard,
Yeah.
and master modes just make it a little easier. So I'm
Sure.
conflicted on that. But yeah, why do you ask that?
I don't know. So there are times when I'm playing by myself, I will grab a hammerhead just for the sake that it's a freaking badass ship, and I'm gonna go deliver like a single box with with a hammerhead. Right? I can see myself doing the same thing with so like an Idris or, I mean, hell, javelin. But
Efficient.
that's right, right. It would make no sense, but it seems like, and I don't think this is a bad thing necessarily, but it seems like you won't be able to manage that as a solo pilot. And maybe you shouldn't, right? Maybe you should not have a single javelin at your disposal without 40 people to help man it. And that's a whole nother discussion. But the idea of flying, I think you were on a C2 yesterday. So you're flying a C2, but you need 4 or 5 individuals running around just to keep the damn fuses, updated and healthy. Man, it's going to take a lot of resources to
Yeah,
fly, right, some of these larger ships. And again, I think it's, at the end of the day, I think it's the right answer. Um, just I feel like it is also a lot at the same time, a lot to
it is a
manage.
lot. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's a different side of this game. It's one that we've not
yeah,
really looked at or talked about. This game's basically been a one person per ship game this whole time,
yeah.
and like the idea of introducing capital ship gameplay, it's a big enough thing that it's going to turn the whole game on its head.
Yes, I
And
agree.
engineering's just the start, I think.
Yeah, yeah,
Do you?
absolutely.
How do you feel about the gameplay of engineering from what you
I
saw?
like it. Yeah, no, I like it. So I have not actually gone into Arena Commander like you did yesterday. I have not actually gone into it and done it myself, but I watched you for about 2 hours. I mean, it looks like fine. And this is a lot of my org don't even want to fly or man a turret. This is what they want to do. They want to live and exist on a ship and manage fuses and manage power distribution and communicate with the pilot and let them know what's happening.
Yeah,
So I think there's an appeal for that. The game loop. I know it's going to get better over time, but it does kind of feel a little monotonous. And I don't know if you got the same impressions playing it, but just going from, um, I guess section to section, checking the fuses, putting a new fuse in. Like, is that it? Is that the extent of what we're getting in 323? Are we expecting it to mature and get better over time? I know we've read some of the patch notes and have an idea of what to expect, but I think initially it's going to be something you dabble with maybe a couple of days, but I think it's going to die off until the next iteration, right? The next maturation of engineering plays in.
hmm yeah. What we're getting in 323 is kind of a basic version
Yeah,
of it.
yeah,
The way I'm looking at it is they've been developing this resource network system, and what we're seeing in engineering, at least here, is like a really small part of it, because we're not touching on, but we're not even, I don't think we're balancing resources at all. Like, we're not balancing power. There's no
Not
coolant.
yet.
We're not messing with gravity, life support. There are a lot of things that fill into this system that I think go a little bit past that active gameplay you're doing of like replacing stuff, and also speaks towards just that complexity of the ships you talked about, being able to have the control over what room you're venting of oxygen or where you're turning gravity on and off. Kind of plays into the mechanic. And then speaking of mechanics, like you were noticing yesterday when I was playing, you're really, you are kind of running around and just replacing things. But even then, I think, they don't have repair gameplay in. So right now you're just kind of pointing a beam at a component and that's your repair. It's not really much. There's no fires that you're putting out. There's no specific glitches that are happening. I'm not sure if the mechanic has to handle that, where like glitches hit components, or if the mechanic is just changing fuses. But I do think there are more things that'll make it a little bit more complex. Overall, I think that monotony is going to make it a little bit less enticing to a lot of people, and that might be okay, because the manager position almost seems like it's more fun.
Yeah, agreed.
That was what Astropub was doing. Were you kind of following what he was doing while I was running around?
Yeah, he was calling out like direction, distance, or like the rooms, or yes, I do have power. No, I don't have power. Did that fuse work? That fuse didn't.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I think it's so funny that you and I are talking about the monotony of something that it's brand new. It's a brand new game loop. Like, it's going to be exciting. But I think you and I have that understanding of the end state. Like, we do, like, putting out the fires is going to be huge, right? The life support, the making sure everything is working throughout the entire life of the flight. That I think would be fun, exciting, enticing. And this first 323, like you said, it's an introduction. We're barely touching the surface. Like, you're going to be replacing a fuse, and that's going to be it. And you might replace 2 or 3 an entire mission. But I don't know. You have to have that 12-year vision. That's CIG.
It was very cool to see how the laser shots, I think they were shooting both laser and ballistic shots at us, and the laser shots were hitting the outside of the ship, but the ballistic shots we could see going through. It looked a little glitchy, but you could tell that the idea that the ballistic shots were penetrating and damaging the ship, and then the specific part of the ship where those shots were hitting, that's where we would blow the fuses.
Yes.
That is very cool to me.
Yes.
It's a simple thing, but like the novelty of getting on somebody else's ship is still cool to me. The novelty of being able to see that whole ship on a map and like track routes, which we're going to talk about the map system soon, that's cool to me. The novelty of shooting the outside of the ship and seeing the inner components get damaged and then being able to pull those components out and repair them, that it's bringing together the magic of engineering we've been waiting for.
Yeah, that attention to detail, that's very meticulous, right? Like hitting that one panel, that one section, and knowing your ships, knowing that that's where you should hit, an A2, a C2, like that is where you want to focus your fire. That is going to be the next level gameplay. Is like, especially if you want to board, if you're a pirate, right? If you're doing piracy and you want to board that ship, you're going to take out the right fuses, right?
That's going to help a lot with the capital ship gameplay we were talking about.
Absolutely.
How about the kind of the other side of that equation, which the person attacking? We've got kind of, I guess this is an addition to master modes almost. We didn't really touch on this, but precision targeting mode. Do you have anything to say about that? It's kind of just a new version of being able to zoom in on your targets.
No, I think that is where I've heard a lot of the realism conversation come in, is like that zoom within a zoom is a little I've heard like terms of obnoxious, unreal, fake, whatever. I don't have an issue with that, and heaven forbid I bring up Starfield. Starfield's doing it right. I think it's an interesting approach of taking out just the engine components or just certain parts of the ship. I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. It does. I feel like there needs to be risk involved, though. Like, you need to be very close, in my opinion. Like, I don't think you should be able to snipe like from a huge distance away, like a small little pin on an A2 just to take out like a certain part of the ship. I think there should be risk involved. You've got to get close. You have to get into a certain range. But overall, I mean, I think it's smart. It adds a strategy to overall combat that doesn't currently exist. I hate this is the cop out answer, but they just need to do it right, or they need to do that good balance of making it happen without making it so easy.
Yeah. Do you find yourself using? I mean, you said you don't fight very often. How often would you say you get into combat in the PU?
I've done a lot more. I mean, obviously with Xenothreat, I've gotten a lot more like comfortable and confident since like doing Xenothreat.
Okay.
So I've been doing a lot more bounty hunting, a lot more merc missions that involve, flying in combat. But I'm still, I mean, I would never put myself up with like a subliminal or some of these like pro level, flyers.
Do you ever find yourself needing to zoom in when you're fighting?
I never have once.
No,
I never have once. No, like for me, and again, I'm not good. So comment section, I'm not good.
Disclaimer.
Yeah, but for me, I mean, I'm in lock mode, and I literally everything else blurs in my vision. I see this little green box. When that box turns green, I shoot. Yeah. That's my aerial combat. That's as good as I get. So.
If you were fighting more ships like an Idris or Javelin and you wanted to go for specific targets on the ship, do you think that would change whether you were zooming or not?
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if I was taking on a capital ship, or if I had intent to board, I would absolutely be more focused on parts of the ship to shoot. So I would definitely be taking advantage of that for sure.
It's kind of interesting because this is a system that came from Squadron 42, I believe. But it also does feel like it could be something that is being prepared specifically for capital ships as well. Like a lot of these systems might not be exactly for capital ships, but they're coming in very suspiciously on time for the Polaris and other capital ships to be made.
Mm-hmm. That's where my hot takes come in.
Yeah, you got any? You want to throw any hot takes in there right now? When is the Polaris coming out?
Yeah, man. So I don't know. So we know that modularity is coming in 323.x. We know it's going to be the Retaliator, but I think we're closer to the Galaxy than we think. So I think the Galaxy is going to be one of those that sneaks up on everybody. If you think about it, the progress they're making on the Zeus is progress that they're making on the Galaxy. It's the same kind of design language, just larger, I guess, and the modular bays that they're already working on, like the modules for that. So I don't know. I think the Galaxy is a lot closer. Specifically for like the Polaris, I think we're going to be getting the Polaris and the Perseus around the same time, personally, but it's going to be post. I think it's going to be post Pyro. It's going to be post 4.0. So we'll be lucky to get those by the end of the year, if not 2025.
So you think we're going to get the Galaxy before the Polaris?
Personally, yes. I think so. And I know there's a lot of data out there. Like they talk more about progress on the Perseus, but when I read modularity, there's a part of me that feels like they're closer than we think with the Galaxy. So
why would they not have put it on that video at the end of the year last year?
I mean,
what am I missing?
It's a great question. Yeah, it's a great question. No, I read. So the extent of, I love reading the monthly reports and getting into the development tracking. And so there are times when you can tell that they are purposefully omitting things. Like they'll say things like working on modularity for the Retaliator and other undisclosed ships. Like, okay, my ears perk up a little bit and I start reading like outside the lines. I go back to other monthly reports. I kind of look at other resources, and they make mention of like progress to ships that were mentioned at XYZ time. And so this is all surmising. You told me about a hot take, or you said hot take. So I honestly think they're going to flip that. I think we'll see probably like the Galaxy, Polaris, then Perseus, in my personal opinion, because of modularity. I didn't expect modularity to be coming in 323. I don't know if you did.
Yeah. I mean, this year, I knew the Retaliator was going to bring it, but I did not know when it was going to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good look. I'm glad they're finally getting to that. I would love the Galaxy. I'm a bigger fan of the Galaxy than the Polaris. It's probably I'm gonna get crucified by my own community here, but I'm not crazy on combat, man. I love the curiosity of space and what it's offering us and things other than pew pew. So I would love to see the Galaxy, but I'm gonna save myself and just give you the props when you're right, and I'm not gonna get my hopes up too high.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, I haven't been wrong yet, but of course, a lot hasn't really happened since CitizenCon last year, so I can't really be wrong if nothing has happened.
The
Go ahead.
only hot take I got was actually I guess there were a couple. The only ship hot take I got was the Consolidated Outland Nomad.
Oh, okay.
And I was like,
Yeah.
really, it was just basically, I was like, okay, the next ship's going to be from Consolidated Outland. And then 4 or 5 months later, it was. And that's the only thing I ever get. And I'm going to hang on to that because it's too hard to predict this kind of stuff.
It is. Yeah, it's kind of a funny story. Quickly though, I accidentally predicted the F8. Right, the F8 last year. I was like, it'd be very interesting if like around this time frame we'd be getting like either the F7A or the F8. And I shit you not, like 2 weeks later, they're like, hey, here's a ticket, marketing event happening with the F8. I'm like, oh my god.
And then the F7A, or I guess
now the
the
F7A.
C Mark II.
Yeah,
but yeah, they're doing that. Let's talk about some of the other greatness of the PTU.
Yeah.
The best part, the Starmap. 100%. What do you think?
Dude, that's game changer. It is an absolute game changer. This is honestly what I expected from it from the very beginning. 2 years ago when I picked it up, and we had what we originally had, which is abysmal. This is incredible. The search functionality alone. If someone says Miner's Lament, and I'm like, what the heck is Miner's Lament? I've never heard it, seen it before. It's as easy as F2 typing in Miner's Lament, and now I've got a whole process on how to get there. It is game changing. I think seeing the different assets at what's at a location. Is there a gun at Port Tressler? It is incredible. I'll wrap up there. Just my overall executive summary. It's incredible. It's my favorite feature of 323. I think they hit the nail on the head with the aesthetics, the execution, all of it.
You like the design?
I do. Yeah, I absolutely do. I think I saw your comments. There's something like the colors, like you would like to see different colors or different aesthetics for it.
I think some more color would be nice.
Yeah.
Mix it up a little bit. I think one of the best parts of the map is the route feature, specifically because it's a nice flash of orange. It's got a solid animation, just breaks up that constant blue.
Yeah.
I think it's a good look. Fair. I would appreciate maybe, throw a couple purples in there, maybe a tomato red, possibly a yellow or two. Like mix it up a little bit. But yeah, I like the design too. I'm gonna invoke a name that you brought up earlier and say that I actually prefer the aesthetic department of the Starmap. I really like a flat, minimal sort of style. I love, large, solid blocks of color. I do it on like my thumbnails and stuff with text inside. I think it looks good. It's eye-catching. It's simple. It's easy to understand. And oh my gosh, it doesn't get freaking obliterated by a differently colored planet. Please, CIG. Please. I will say this, on the actual PTU, I didn't have too much trouble reading anything. Did you?
No. It's there were a couple of names that seemed like they were still encoding. Like there's a couple of those like placeholder type nomenclatures, I think. So like other than like the naming conventions, I thought the colors were fine. I don't know. I don't mind like the mundane. Again, I'm going back to my time in the military. A lot of what we had were like greens, right? So light greens.
Yeah.
So I go back to what's familiar to me, and like that to me, the light blues are familiar to me. So I see it. I try to fast forward myself 930 years, and like, is this what I would see in 2954? I think it looks futuristic. It looks clean. But to your point, it's not necessarily the most like sexy image on the screen. But I guess my question for you as a follow-up is, at what point does it detract? like too much color. I'm with you. I love the orange. Like having the route plan, it's very eye catching. So I can be focused on the screen and see kind of where I'm going. 100% agree with you there. But at what point are they crossing that line where it becomes a distraction?
Oh, I think it's very easy to. And,
Yeah.
no more than 3 or 4 secondary or tertiary colors in the map.
Yeah.
Um, but like there's a really good concept image of the star map from way back when, and it had a couple of colors that were on the legend. And I think that those were a nice little splash of color.
Mm.
I'm gonna say this: the star map is incredible. I've been waiting for it for such a long time. Been reporting on it and making videos about it way longer than I would like to admit. A lot of, oh yeah, this is getting worked on, guys. Just just keep an eye out for. Literally, this has been in monthly reports for like 2.5 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've been waiting for this star map since they started with building blocks, folks. In terms of covering Star Citizen, the amount of closure that we're getting with 323 is crazy. There's so many things being introduced that we've been reporting on for a long time. So I'm beyond hyped for this. Don't get me wrong on the design critiques. The functionality of it, the way, like down to the subtle way that the map pulls back to track the orange route as it expands, and then and the text flickers in and it kind of types itself into the map. All of that, like all those little details, I love them. They make us a great map to use, and I think I'm always going to love opening it and getting to use it, which is something I've never said about the map we already had. So
never,
in my opinion, a success. The search is a cherry on top. The search is amazing. The search is the bowl. Screw the cherry. Search is an incredible addition.
That's right.
And then, the only thing that does bum me out is while we do get the ability to save data points for ourselves, which is incredible, we can't share them yet.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an exciting, I guess that would be like an exploration loop. Is that what they teased at SitCon?
Basically,
Exploration?
yeah, data mining, data running, and exploration.
Yeah. So, I see in chat the baby steps comment. Yeah, absolutely. So let's get like, I don't know, let's get off the ground, like walking, and then we can crawl, walk, run, to the end state.
Gosh,
but
it's just like, it's right there. Like we can save the points. The coordinate system is in there. If I wanted to be an explorer, it's right there. It's so close. Yeah. But yeah, next patch, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was Inside Star Citizen that came across the Pico the Penguin, and they marked their map for that Pico the Penguin that's in Grimhacks.
Right.
Like that, I can't imagine, like beyond just like in your Discord sharing it with your community or whatever. Like, hey, here's a cave, here's a spot where I would suggest, the mining operations or salvaging operations. Pinpointing locations in an asteroid field that otherwise would be impossible to find. Yeah. Like that is like the next cherry on top is when can we start, sharing that? Because I'm in 100% agreement there.
Yeah, there are a couple things with the star map that aren't working. Those being able to share those. Also, saving any data points in space doesn't work right now. Yeah. So there's that. Yeah. And there is no planetary map. You have your local map and you have your star map. But when you go to like the right outside the city, sort of up until the orbit of space, there isn't really a map equivalent. It just kind of shows a zoomed in version of the planet from orbit. So they're working on those things. And it sounds like they'll probably come in 3. I think we're all crossing our fingers that it'll be 4.0.
Yeah.
But they'll probably come in like 3.24, if not 4.0.
So you think we're getting a 324 before?
I don't know. I don't even want to say it. I don't want to speak it into existence.
You heard it from Space Tomato. There's going to be a 324.
It's always a possibility, right? Always. I mean, they're not going to do, I know what people are already typing in chat, 323.2. Like,
yeah.
They might go on the same code base. Honestly, it would make sense for them to do a 324 on the same code base, kind of like they did with 317. Just for the sake of the replication layer separation. But
sure,
I don't know, man. When they said 4.0 by the summer, I didn't believe it then. And as well as server meshing is going right now, I still can't say with confidence that I believe it now. I would love it. I would absolutely love it. But I could, like, the way that this patch is landing, probably beginning of May, mid-May, are we really going to have See, the patches are just weird this year. That's weird timing
Yeah.
because normally the next patch would land at the end of July, beginning of
Yeah.
August, but that only gives us what 2-3 months in between these two.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so I guess makes sense for the quarters. I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you
I
think?
don't know. Well, I've already did my one hot take for the episode.
Keep them
Um,
coming.
yeah, we will obviously have a 323.1, more than likely a 323.2. Um, to your point though, like replication layer worked for me. Like the 2 days ago that I was in the 323, like we had the server error standby, and like a minute later I'm back in. It's like replication layer, it worked in that one instance. Uh, server meshing, like we've seen it work in that preview channel. A lot of conversation around that. We saw Pyro jumping, like it's here. Do you think, I'm answering your question with a question, do you think they roll out 4.0 knowing that server meshing is still kind of up in the air? Is that like their test for Pyro? Is like, hey, let's just launch 4.0 like they did 3.18 and say, all right, here we go. Let's see what happens with server meshing.
No, they can't
Because
afford that.
I 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. So I guess the caveat there is, okay, well, so 323 is it. We've got to break it on purpose. We have to break 323 as hard as we can with replication layer, server meshing, any other sort of, playground. And then 4.0, it could still be, but if it is summer tomato, it's going to be late summer. It's going to be like, I don't know, August,
Yeah.
September, like right before a sitcon, in my opinion. It won't be June, July.
Yeah, there's a lot riding on 4.0. Like,
Yep.
there's a lot riding on Squadron. I think that's the most intense place for their focus. But 4.0 is, it's not Star Citizen 1.0, but it's going to be seen as, this is what Star Citizen is. Like, up until now, there have been times where companies have covered Star Citizen and mentioned an update or something big. Usually it's funding numbers. 4.0 is going to be the one where they're like, okay, this is like 3.0 was 2017, 2018. This is like their big, it's basically reaching the beta stage, and people are going to start reporting on it seriously, I think. And so they need to, they can't just 318 that. No way. That would be bad.
No, I think their 318 risk is 323. I think this is the one with the tech advances that they've got to get right. And so I think that's the silver lining, is if they can launch 323, right now it's just wave 1. I'm expecting wave 2 to happen next week, so we'll get more people involved. But 323 has got to hit the PU cleanly. And that'll determine, I think, when 4.0 launches. If it hits cleanly and we're like, hey, this is great. What a great onboarding of 323. Pyro could be August. Could be September.
Sounds like you are in the camp of we're going straight to 4.0 after 323.
Yeah, I think 323, they might go into like a 323.3, 323.4. Like they'll probably overload 323, but I do believe it'll go straight into 4.0. Because, I mean, if you watch Inside Star Citizen, like Jared Huckabee still talks as though like Pyro is summer. And if that's the case, there's not time. There's not time for a 324. To your point, they're going to launch 323 and be like, what are you going to do with 324? It's going to be out for like a couple weeks.
Yeah. Either there's a 324 in like August-ish, and then 4.0 gets pushed till November or October, or they launch 4.0 in August-ish, or they just stretch out 323.
Right.
Maybe they stretch that branch out a little bit longer, but the outlook is becoming more and more narrow as we keep going. At the beginning of the year, it was like, what's going to be happening? But as we continue, server meshing tests coming up, things are looking a little bit better. We'll keep up on it. I'm not trying to huff any hopium right now.
Yeah, I mean, along the same spirit, in January is when you and I talked on our podcasts, right? And I said, like, Squadron 42 is coming out in October. Like, I have since redacted. I've since redacted that because, like, we haven't heard shit about Squadron 42. Like, there's no marketing, no PR, no, here's where we're at with Squadron 42, other than the monthly reports. So that's not a thing. It could still be the theme of SitCon. It could still be like a launch party for 2025, but it's not coming out this year.
I think that's what I think this is the last Citizen Con before Squadron comes out.
Yeah.
But who knows when it will actually be. I really, really, really hope that they at some point just release an updated recording of the vertical slice from 2017.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh, I
Oh
would
yeah.
love to see that side by side. That would be really cool.
Yeah,
'Cause
absolutely.
even like the character models, they showed like Old Man's difference. They showed Agent Trejo's difference. They look
Yeah.
ridiculously new. So I
Yeah.
can't wait to see what they're gonna do in marketing for that kind of stuff.
See, and I think if that's going to be the theme of SitCon this year is like a Squadron 42, I can see them doing all of that. Here's where
Yeah,
we were, and
yeah,
here's where we're going to be next year. Like that would be so sexy.
looking forward to it. All right, so we were talking future. Let's get back to 323 and
Yeah.
what's going on there. So we just covered the star map. That was chef kiss highlight. What about the rest of the UI? So your HUD, the combat stack in the bottom, the compass, new mission objectives, minimap, that kind of stuff. How do you feel about like the in your face UI? This is the stuff that everyone's going to see all the time. Is it good? Are they going to hate it?
Yeah. So I don't know. This is like I'm usually more positive. So this is probably the one field that I'll be a little bit on the negative side or critical side. This is where I think they're trying to do too much. Like the stack on the bottom left, just simplify it. I don't know. There's like these big graphics that look holographic, and it's cool at first, but it does after a couple hours being in game. I don't know. It's again almost feels like they're almost doing too much. When you have a helmet on, you've got on the far left, far right, you have like altimeters, or you have like the degree
Pitch
of
meters.
the pitch.
Yeah.
Why do you need that on your helmet? It's like I can see it in flight. Why do you need it on your helmet? So there's a couple of pieces that seems like it's either like it's not going to be used, it doesn't have a purpose, or they are trying to do too much. Where that user interface, for me personally, should be very clean. It should be very crisp. It should, I almost like the old stack better, in my opinion. The bottom left side. Now it's just too much, in my opinion. So I don't know. That's the one like negative critique is inside the apps, inside your apps. It's great. It's a great layout. I think it looks very well done. But that every day walking around a spaceport, walking around a city, it does get a little. I don't know.
Take your helmet off, Sulyce. Why are you walking around the city with a helmet on, man?
that's 2 RP, man. That's 2 RP.
There is a lot more on the screen with this stuff. Bottom left, yeah, seen an update. How do you feel about like the way the bottom right is working with the ammo count and the way that they display all of the stuff you're carrying now?
I'm good with that. To me is good. That to me, like, that's critical. That's critical information. Yeah, your health is, I know, I get it. Your health, hydration, all that's good. But that supply management is critical information. I do like how it's consolidated in the bottom right. So that I will agree with. It's all the other, I don't know, it's all the other stuff. I do like the missions, right? So the HUD display now for like when you get a mission.
Mm-hmm.
In the PTU, it's like Xeno threats. Like you actually get to participate in some of the raid. I think that display is a lot better. It's thinner. It's a lot more consolidated. That's great. Again, I just feel like the rest is, I don't know, superfluous.
Yeah. Okay. How about the dynamic crosshair?
Oh no. I hate everything about it, dude.
Okay. All right. Give it to us. Let's hear it.
So here's so again, for those listeners who don't know me, 12 years, United States Army Special Forces, like I'm big when it comes to combat in video games, and no game ever has made me happy. Let me just preface. No game has ever made me happy. I don't need to see where my crosshairs are until I'm looking down the sights of my weapon system. I don't. And so having these two, or having this like weird off camera crosshair, it's distracting. I don't need to know it. I don't need to know where it's aiming until I'm looking down my sights. So that piece, whatever, it's distracting to me, but I can easily get over that. The next piece here is scopes, not to like fast forward in the conversation, tell me to stop. but that scope piece bugs me. There's a lot of science behind parallax view, what it means to look down an 8 powered scope. And I don't think they've captured that either. So when you zoom down, this is annoying me, Tomato. Like, this is any game, not just CIG. When you're looking down your scope, it zooms in the entire surrounding as well. It's not realistic.
Yeah.
They can blur it, that's fine, but it is so distracting to look down a magnification and everything else gets magnified and pulled into you, when most shooters keep both eyes open. Right, we leave both eyes open so I can have that awareness, my spatial awareness of around me, and somehow that needs to be captured in a game somehow. So when you bring up crosshairs, the new scopes, the actual combat experience, I'm going to be a negative Nancy when it comes to any of that.
That's fair. So, this is the more contentious stuff. I'll give you that. The nice part about the crosshairs, you can turn it off.
That's
I think
fair.
that is not only can you turn it off, I think it's more so than the crosshair feature itself. I like that it is the first time they're finally customizing armor in game with an actual advantage you can get, because it really starts to step on that whole you only advance through gaining skills and, like unlocking abilities in MMOs, and it starts to be that you have equipment that you chose and it gives you a specific advantage. So I don't have much to say about how whether or not it's useful, but I do like the idea that it's specializing armor.
That I can agree with you with. Yeah, I want to have a reason to put on the Orc Mark X.
Yeah,
like I want to have a reason to put on, maybe it's a light gear versus heavy gear versus medium, and I do think having that that specialization, to your point, is super crucial.
Yeah,
so
I agree with you on the scope zoom. It has always annoyed me that it zooms in the whole screen when you zoom into things, not in Star Citizen, but in other things.
Halo.
I think the hard part about it is because in order to not zoom in one of them and zoom in the other, you basically have to render the whole scene twice. So it ends up being a performance problem. I hope they can figure out how to get around that, though, because you're right. It looks a lot better if you just not zooming in the whole screen, but it sounds like they might just go with blurring it. They control the engine. They're doing all the render tech. So like, I hope they can come up with something for it.
Yeah. Well, no game has. And again, this is the separation of reality versus a video game. Like, at some point, do people want to deal with that crap? Probably not. Like, I don't know. But for me, living in space and like completely detaching myself from reality, I want this game to be able to succeed at that.
Yeah, I guess.
Small detail.
How about the looting kind of inventory menu that got added? Did you get to use that at all?
I have not been able to use that yet. I'd love to learn from you, but I have not been able to experience really FPS combat in 323 just yet.
I haven't gotten to experience the combat. I just hold up that menu a couple times, but it is consistent with everything else we've seen in this update. And I will say that by that I mean it is polished. Not polished to the extent that it's ready for a full release game, but polished way past other things in Star Citizen. Like, polished to the point where when you scroll over items in a menu, they make a sound effect. Now, that sounds very simple, but that doesn't really happen all that often in alpha. You don't need sound effects on your menus. The menu just needs to work. So getting to the point where we're getting solid feedback from these menus and things that we're using, you can specifically feel it in the looting inventory screen versus then you switch over to the regular inventory screen and it feels very out of date. So I didn't use it too much in FPS combat. I'm sure it does speed things up and it makes things a lot easier, but I do feel like from the little bit I used it, it feels higher quality. It feels more like it's preparing me to play the game in a way that they actually want me to play, as opposed to just kind of joining in the game and having an inventory. It feels like it has more direction, and some people might like it, some don't, but it's a positive step forward in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so. What's important to me is, like, let's go to phase 4 of Xenothreat, right? So phase 4 Xenothreat, when you're at SPK, I mean, you're having to fend off several waves of spawned enemy. And so you might run out of ammunition. And I have died so many times trying to loot a body so I can get their ammo and their weapon system off of them so I can use it. I think this solution, the quick quick action. I think it's what they're calling it, but the quick action, the quick functionality of the F key, of being able to draw ammo, draw the weapon off. I think that is going to be crucial. The aesthetics of it that you mentioned, sexy, great. Can't wait to experience it. I'm sure it'll be great. But the speed at which I can get back into the fight, that's what's important to me.
Yeah.
So if it's able to achieve that, done. Success in my book.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And you mentioned like the default action stuff. That's a good one to touch on next, because that's a big change to the interaction system. I want to put two questions. I'm going to package them here together,
Okay.
catch you off guard. First, I want to hear about your take on the default actions, and then I want to hear about your take on the overall personal interaction system. And if you think it is just trying to support controllers, or
Oh, you're not.
Or is Star Citizen going to console? So
Oh, I knew you were.
give us.
Didn't
the
we
hot
talk about
take
this
version.
before? Man, okay. Squadron 42 is going to go to console. I almost can guarantee you that, but I sure hope not. I hope Star Citizen does not go console. I do have friends that play this game with controller. Conif, the guy that I mentioned earlier at the top of this podcast, he plays solely with a controller. So great. That's awesome. If it works for them, great. I don't want this to go to console because of all the sacrifices they will have to make to appease console players. I know it sounds elitist. I know it does, but I'll just start with
Filthy
responding.
peasants.
Yeah, I know. Get yourself a $3,000 computer like the rest of us. No, so I'll start with that and work my way backwards. Squadron 42 should be console. It's the gateway drug. It's going to get people into the whole, universe. But it needs, like Star Citizen, needs to stay PC solely. I do feel that the overall user interface interaction changes are very console. It feels very familiar. It feels like you're playing Starfield, where you have a hotkey and then you just move your thumbstick to select what function you want to, execute. It feels like they're moving that towards a controller, and that's what they're trying to do with the consolidation. I don't know if I like it better or worse. Like I do like how it puts the F key above things you can interact with. That is super helpful when you're looking at a table and seeing what you can pull off the table and etc.
And that can also be turned off. I think that's key for people to know. That's something I showed on the stream yesterday, because a lot of people have a problem with that. And you can turn it off, so there's nothing there. It might show the name of what you're looking at, but it won't have the big F key shining.
Interesting. I actually did not know that. So yeah, I think that that is good to go, and I think adding the customization is super huge, because there are things I don't want to have to go to my ship and select between 4 options just to get into the pilot seat. Right? Like, I don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
I want to be able to quickly loot ammo, or quickly, go into loot other than moving or dragging a body. I want to be able to quickly go into that. So anything to expedite that process is good for me. Again, I haven't really been able to dive into it since Wednesday. I think Wave 1 hit Wednesday. I haven't been able to get into looting. I haven't been able to get into more of the execution of that user interface, but the overall aesthetics, I personally like it. I like the idea of it highlighting things to interact with. I didn't realize there's so much crap in the habs when you log into the game. I didn't realize there's so much you can interact with in the hab room. It's crazy. Books.
Oh gosh, that's what I was saying in chat yesterday. One of the biggest things they could do for this new player experience is giving people some way of knowing what they can interact with. You've just never known. And they're like, yes, it's such an immersive tactile game. And then you run up to a box and they're like, you can't do anything with it. How am I supposed to know that without clicking all over it and wondering if it's a glitch? So in my opinion, yeah, that's one of the biggest parts of that update.
So I've got a little Easter egg for you and your listeners.
Right.
And maybe y'all already know this, but did you know in the Corsair, in the kitchen area behind, there's like a tray on the kitchen area. There's a flask, a UEEN flask that you can pick up and store into your inventory. And it's a beautiful object. Go check it out. Yeah, the flasks. So Vastin in chat knows.
I wonder why on the Corsair.
I don't know why it's specifically there, but that flask is like it's behind a couple of items, but like that kind of stuff. Knowing what
Yeah.
you can like take and pull in your inventory,
Yeah.
super cool.
Exactly. Let's see what else is there. Did you run into any? Did you get to see any of the animals, the creatures that they've put into the patch yet?
So I watched Ollie. So Ollie put out a YouTube video that had the Merrick and the Copian. So I was able to see like through other content creators. I haven't been able to see it myself, but um, I also saw a couple of videos of them like totally glitching through the planet. So I
But
don't
of
know. It wasn't
course,
very NPC, a very Star Citizen NPC like.
that's just what they do. What do you think of the fact that they're adding those? Were you at all expecting that in this patch or like in this time period?
Not at all. No, that's one of those, major surprises. I had no intel. Like I know the monthly reports are like, hey, we're working on flora and fauna, but it never really hinted at, we're getting close to finalizing 2 species of alien. So that was a huge surprise. They dropped that little 10-second clip, social media. CIG social media dropped that 10-second clip. I thought, oh crap, here we go. So it was very exciting to see it come out. And again, through other content creators, I've been able to watch their interactions with them, but I haven't been able to experience it myself.
Okay. Yeah, I did not get to see them much, but it did. It's cool that they're bringing it in, and I think this is another low-key addition for like crafting and stuff, and just filling out the verse with more stuff to do.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you something. You're smarter than I am. So
well, thank you, but
persistent
really
entity streaming. So if I take a C2 and I fill that up with space cows, right? If I fill it up with space cows and then I drop it on area 18, will those space cows forever be at area 18?
Did they reach terminal velocity? We're gonna have splattered space cows all over area 18.
Yeah. But I see gamers being gamers. I'm seeing like, this is an opportunity for us to figure out what can we do with these animals, like right, wrong, or indifferent.
Right.
Super interesting. And that's one of the problems that I continue having. Like I talk with my org, I talk about it on my podcast, like persistent entity streaming. It brings up a lot of questions. Like if I put a space cow in the middle of the city, is it there forever?
Yeah, and how many cows does it take for me to get a CS3? Like what's the cow per crime stat ratio when it comes to dropping live animals on cities? Because it sounds like fun, but yeah, I got to be careful. I got to keep their reputation strong. They can't know that GII is about. I mean, that's like practically animal abuse. I can't even talk about this. None of this. This isn't.
Is it impacting you?
Take it.
You're affected.
Edit this one out, Mrs. Tomato. Take this out. Yeah, I haven't gotten to see the creatures, but I'm glad that they're being added. I think it helps the game feel alive. That and like seeing NPC ships, AI ships flying around and landing and taking off and all that stuff is going to help so much. I really can't wait to see more of, and I guess this is going to be like a post server meshing thing when we start actually seeing more AI around the game.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the birds, I guess the Merricks, the Merricks and the Copians, like seeing them 100%, it almost adds a level of like anxiety as well. Like, you're leaving from one, like your ship, you land 1,000, meters away before you get to a UGF. Your path there, you're going to be filling it with hopefully NPCs that are on patrol, hopefully. But now you have, these aliens to deal with as well. Like it adds a whole nother level of complexity. And so I welcome that. However that's going to look.
It comes up all the time too. Like you could land on a planet, be near a cave, for whatever realize maybe you go into that cave because there's a storm coming in and you weren't near your ship. You go into the cave and now you're dealing with creatures in the cave. Like, what do? Do you stay near the entrance and wait for the weather to pass? Do you go deeper in and fight the creatures and try to get something out of it? Like, these are the situations you can start to find yourself in once this game has systems A through Z rather than just system C, which is creatures. Like, it just looks like creatures right now, but all of this starts to add on to each other. And it's starting to look really good.
Yeah, it's starting to look, excuse me, it's starting to look like a complete universe. And I can't wait for that to actually start. start happening.
As long as they just, they work.
Yeah. Nothing like a T-posing space cow, that's frightening.
T-posing. Jesus. Bad for its limbs. I don't know if
That's
cows
right.
can do that. Let's go back to the map system real quick. Because I didn't get to touch on the interior and local map. That is a very radical change for Star Citizen, a game that has mainly focused on physical signs and sort of map identifiers in the game. I'm gonna lead you with this question because I think the context for some people is important. The idea of using the game as navigation, right? You're not looking at a map. You're looking around the game. You're seeing signs that tell you where to go. A lot of people feel like this sort of map is going to remove that aspect. How do you feel about this mini map and the overall interior or local map they're adding?
All right. So the theme that I've brought to this podcast is simulation versus gamifying. I loved that about Star Citizen. Like my first time getting into Area 18, not knowing where to go. And my friend who got me into the game was like, start reading signs. And just like you would in real life, you're looking at kiosks, you're looking at airport signage, is what we theoretically call them in retail. But the airport signage, hearing people talk about where certain locations are, like being immersed. And I think this is a question about immersion.
Yeah.
Being immersed in the environment was something that Star Citizen was providing. However, even in real life, 2024, even in real life, I've got this phone, right?
Yeah.
Like I've got a phone.
Thing.
So like at the end of the day, I'm not driving across the state of Texas, looking at where signs are to see where Dallas is as relative to San Antonio. You have maps and you have like your phone up. So it's not so alien. It's not so far-fetched to have both. What I don't want to have happen though, Tomato, is like I don't want them to sacrifice one for the other. Like I want them to continue putting airport signage. I want them to continue like the branding team. I want them to still work on making the world feel immersed or immersive. While at the same time providing this overhead, this overlay of where to go. So I'm okay with both. I will probably still rely on real life signage or immersive signage, know where I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
But having the option is nice. Not everybody is like me there.
Do you think that the mini map maybe should be taken away when you take your helmet off?
Oh, good call. Good call. Maybe yes, maybe no. I don't know. I haven't thought about that. I can imagine glasses like the Google glasses that we have nowadays.
Yeah, or the visor they basically use for lore right now.
That's right. So I can imagine you could still put something on.
Yeah.
But it might be as something as simple as turning off a function in your settings. To switch it on and off. But that's a good point, though. If you want to be able to see it, you got to put something on.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it makes sense for them to both be there. Like, obviously, we're going to have maps of locations in the future, but from the game perspective, there's a lot of the exploration and data side of things to be considered. Like, that's the hard thing about these map systems is they both have to be really good player tools that everybody can access, and then they also have to be this kind of gamified, difficult to master thing for explorers and data runners, and figuring out that balance must be pretty difficult.
It's one of the things I like about it is being in a city and knowing which doors you can open and which doors you can't. Like I've been able to access places I didn't know existed. There are bars on Crusader I didn't know were even there until this mini map showed me. So I think there's some discovery there that's nice, but also I didn't have to work for it this time. You know what I mean? Like it was spoon fed me.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I could see it helping exploration. I could see it also kind of hurting, like I said, the overall immersion of what exploration could potentially be.
Mm-hmm. It also kind of highlights when you go into the local maps just how small the landing zones actually are. Maybe not Lorville, but definitely like New Babbage.
Yeah.
It shows you just like how little of the actual city there is to go around in the interior.
I was wondering if you were going to call that out. It's like the smoke and mirrors. Like CIG does really good with smoke and mirrors. Like it makes you look like you can go and do anything anywhere, which you almost can. But yeah, that map is like, actually, this is your corridor.
I hope the building interiors help with that. Help them
Yeah.
flesh more of that stuff out.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that.
All right, more of what's in the actual patch. So, folks, we are going through 323 features, but only ones we've had hands-on with so far. There are still things that need to be added in later updates of the PTU, which is why we do think that it's still going to be going for quite a while. But one of the bigger ones, definitely one that's going to be in the game in this update, the character customizer. We kind of talked about it a little bit at the beginning. You got beards in the game. You had to give up your mobility for it, though. But like in depth, what's your review on this customizer compared to Star Wars Galaxies, the Old Republic, other games with character customizers? How do you feel about this one?
Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it. It is enough of the granularity without feeling overwhelming. So, like they still have the blending process in there. So if you like a certain like model, you can easily go to that model and blend your character to be more like that model. So there's some simplification there, but it can be as in depth or granular as you want. And this is before tattoos and this is before piercings. So that's not here yet. But makeup, highlights. I mean, I can put the grays that you see in my beard right now. You can put the grays in your beard in this game. And like that's just incredible. We saw the technology on CitizenCon of like rendering each like hair follicle basically and making it look wavy and just the way it interacts on your body. But it is a very well done in-depth character creator. And when I compare it to like Starfields, just because that's the latest new game that I've played, I think they do it better. I think CIG, Star Citizen, is doing it better than other games. Even compared to Baldur's Gate, the Baldur's Gate 3 customizer. I think this is, especially when they introduce tattoos and piercings, this has the potential of being better. And the reason why I'm saying that is like the anchor points. The anchor points is like, for me, very special, very groundbreaking. If I want higher cheekbones, maybe the back corner of my cheekbone, I literally click and drag, done. That's it. Like it's so user intuitive. And again, I'll repeat this one last time, without feeling overwhelming. There are some customizers that do kind of the same thing, but it's like I just want to play. Like, where's the default setting? Where's default like 5? I'll pick that and go. But this has been like a good experience.
Cool, man. I haven't played every game. I don't know every character customizer. No, Black Desert Online is kind of one people point towards a lot. I think they do the sculpting stuff, but that is high praise. Baldur's Gate is known for its character customizer, so I think the only thing I hope for with this customizer is that we get more faces to choose from.
Yes.
Obviously some more hairstyles would be nice.
Agreed.
And yeah, I mean, I think they do a good job. You could probably have more sort of like skin conditions in there. They have freckles, they have sunspots. They could probably do a couple other things. But for the most part, I think it's a great system. The hair looks incredible. Like you said, there's a ton of customization. Overall, with the music and the sound effects, the VFX, all the stuff we talked about throughout the show, it again feels like a polished piece of software that's running in a game that they plan for people to view as at least a beta at some point.
Yeah. And it's tip of the iceberg. It's like surface level with all the things that we kind of mentioned, the tattoos, scarring, like that is going to bring a lot of that life into your character as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's got a good platform.
Distribution centers are not really in the game right now. Did you, I don't think, is it worth talking about right now? Did you have much to say on that?
Well, only that they're empty. So, you know, it's one of the features I'm most looking forward to, because I do think it's a quest hub, you know, for Soul Provision, which is my organization. We're a logistics, you know, minded organization. Like this is going to be a great loop for us. So we're super excited about DCs. Right now, there are some in the game. There are some DCs that are live. They're just, they're dead. They're dead. Yeah. You go inside, it's just like a static feeling. They're not as like live and robust and happening like they teased on Inside Star Citizen. So they're there. They're fun to explore. There's just not a lot of reason to go there. Not a lot of reason to be there. So I would say probably not worth, you know, more than a couple more seconds talking about it. But I can't wait for it to come.
I can see when I got there. They just started, they waited until I was deep inside the building, and then they just started shooting at me, and I had to like It
Good.
was, yeah, it was very scary.
Good.
10 out
Good.
of
Yeah.
10 would recommend.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think they're
Yeah.
amazing locations.
They are
Like in terms of how they're constructed and the size of them, what do you think?
huge. I mean, they're exact that in that sense, they are exactly what I expected coming out of Inside Star Citizen. So um, I can see them also growing. I don't want to talk about raids. I don't think we're even close to that yet. But when you saw like the operations of like raids being teased, yeah, I think a DC is perfectly built for that. Good size, good egress points, good tactical ways of entry. I think it's gonna be a great game loop.
Does it feel redundant at all with space stations and outposts and cities already being pretty big locations with other types of gameplay?
Um, I get the spirit of the question. I think a DC is unique enough. Like I don't think there's anything like it as far as like even like the mining centers that you can go to or like the UGFs, the current bunkers. Like the current bunkers are definitely monotonous. They're definitely copy paste.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this is enough of a change of the status quo that it does feel refreshing. It does feel like something new. But I do think, to the spirit of your question, that's going to be a task that they're going to like. They can't do another bunker thing where every bunker is the exact same with like a quick little modification.
Yeah,
So they absolutely need to keep some deviation from DC to DC.
agreed. Yeah, these are going to be, seems like big long-term locations, something that
Yeah.
we'll be using a lot when the game is finally ready to go live.
Yeah, and I think on our last podcast we did together, we talked about this. I want it to be a quest hub. I want it to be a place that just is vibrant. I want it to be vibrant. I want us to be able to get any sort of type of mission, whether it's inside the DC or outside the DC. I think it'd be great for mining, resources, hunting, space cows, whatever you want to call them. I think DCs will be a great hub for that.
What do you think of actually talking about missions and mission givers, I think being something that I'd love to see there. What do you think of like the new mission contract manager and the Mobiglas redesign overall?
So I haven't been able to dabble too much into it. I like the reorganization. I like being able to collapse the entire list. Like that's convenient. I do like the idea of the quick. I think it was general and then personal, but now it's called something different now. But they'll toggle switch. So I like the consolidation. I just didn't really get to dive too much into it. The piece that I did notice though is that alert, right? The alerts that we get currently in the live PU, they're so in your face, they're loud, they're obnoxious. It's noise. But the few times that they've procced on the EPTU, it's clean. It's clean and crisp. It's quick little, here's a Xeno threat thing. Do you want to participate? Yes or no? And it's nice. It's peaceful.
I know people are going to talk about not using Y and N for that thing, but gosh, I love having Y and N and not the brackets.
Yeah, it is. It's Y for yes. I remember when it first popped, I'm hitting the left bracket. I'm like, accept. Why is it not accepting? Yeah,
I think I mainly have a problem with that because my keyboard is in a different language. So the bracket is not where it's supposed to be and I can never find it. And I'm like, I don't want to hit right bracket. So I'm just going to keep guessing all these keys. Yeah. That makes it easy.
Well, and to the point in chat right now, you can just rebind it. I mean, that's the beauty of key binding. So if you're really hell bent on, if that's your one piss, the piss off of 323, go ahead and just rechange.
Choice.
Yeah, change the key binding.
Yeah. Okay, to wrap things up, let's talk about one of your favorites, EVA Tier 2. Give me the full lowdown. What do you love about it? Why is it so great?
Well, okay, so quick backstory. Xeno Threat right now has two phases where you have to EVA, and it's atrocious, man. Like it is so bad, especially in phase 4 where you're having to EVA into these comm links. It is comm links that are armed with bombs and like proximity mines, so you're screwed. So EVAing, getting out of your ship, EVAing into the comm link, trying to go down to turn off or abort the upload. It's a reminder of just how broken EVA is. And I feel like they did that on purpose. I feel like CIG was like, hey, this is what we're fixing. Go have fun.
It's a taunt.
Yeah, it is. It's like, remember how much you hate this? So when I'm doing it in the EPTU, this 323, it's night and day. It is such a great experience, and being able, one of my favorite things to do is like, you're going forward and I want to check behind me. It's so smooth. It is so smooth to just simply roll over and look between my legs like you would in real life.
Hmm.
It is such an intuitive, such a great experience. And I think you called it out right before I got off last episode, or last from yesterday. You had made mention that it's also it's not like the head is detached from the body, so it's easy to like keep looking as you're turning your body, and like
Yeah,
it's just great, man. It's a great improvement, quality of life improvement.
it is very cool. I also like that we have uncoupled flight now.
Yes.
So you can set yourself flying via EVA, let go of the keys, and your player just keeps floating through space.
Yep.
And that's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's
Which
yeah.
unfortunately plays into fuel, like the jetpack fuel or whatever they're calling it. Like,
Hmm.
I don't know. How do you feel about that management?
I love it.
Do you really?
It's core Star Citizen philosophy.
Mm.
Make your choices and deal with the consequences. You've got your tractor beam, you've
That's
got
right.
your EVA fuel, and you've got the ability to use your hands to move around. Are you going to give up a utility slot for that tractor beam, or are you going to say no tractor beam, I will just depend on my own hands? Are you going to
Mm.
use your EVA fuel to get around, or is it possible that that EVA fuel could be used for something else? I don't know. Like it's again making you think about what you're bringing with you, and what kind of
Yeah.
equipment maybe you're using. Some equipment won't have EVA thrusters, so I like the idea of having that fuel limited. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and that's great insight. I look at like a game like Fallout 76, right? So Fallout 76 MMO, but they've got you on like hydration and food. Like you
Hmm.
have to maintain that just to live and survive in that world. And I almost equate this to that, but I think you make a good point. Like it's risk versus reward, right? You
Yeah.
can, you can ride your jetpacks as long as you want, but you're going to suffer that consequence when that happens. It's just when I
Yeah.
first mentioned it, I'm like, oh god, it feels very micromanagey. But
It could be. I think as long as they don't make it hard for it to
yeah,
stay filled up, um, even going so far as to say, yeah, your EVA fuel will auto start to fill back up once you reach atmosphere.
mm,
That kind of stuff maybe could make it easier, but the overall idea that like EVA is going to get to be a more popular type of gameplay. Space stations are
yeah,
getting EVA entries. Ships are going to be able to turn off gravity. You're going to have to
yeah,
consider, like, it's one of the most important parts of space, right? It makes sense for them
yeah.
to kind of play off of that to make us make choices.
Yeah. Is the walking mechanism, is that live in 323?
No.
So space crawling or whatever they're calling
Yeah,
it.
the
Okay.
using your hands, the zero G push and pull,
Yeah.
none of that is live. The
Got
limited fuel is not live, so you don't have to worry about that yet. We can get used to this EVA system first, and
it.
then start to work into that. But the game is
Yeah.
getting both simplified in some areas for the sake of allowing players to jump in easier. It's getting much more complex in some areas, though. In the
Yeah.
name of, guys, this isn't scope creep. This is the original pitch. A lot of these things. These are the things they set out in 2013. Just finally getting the code to actually make them work. So it is going to get a lot more complex. Much of that complexity you actually don't have to deal with as a player. Like if you don't want to, engineering, don't worry about that. If you're in a solo ship, just keep your ship repaired. Like
Yeah.
I think that's what message they need to be sending. Is like we're complicating this game, but it's not going to force you to
Yeah.
do everything.
You don't have to do it. Yeah. Absolutely.
What's your main takeaway of 323 in the PTU so far? Just like the stuff we've experienced so far.
Yeah, it's much needed. It's a much needed quality of life patch that just so happens to also have a couple of game loops coming with it that we weren't expecting, like a DC. But it's finally getting, like, if I were to put an executive summary on this, it's finally putting a 2012 game into the 2024 expectations. Cosmetically, aesthetically, execution wise, it's going to get us to that point where it feels okay. all right, now I feel like we're ready. I feel like we're ready for 4.0. I feel like we're ready for 1.0 with this next set. So this, you can argue, is a quality of life patch. It might excite some. It might not be enough for others, but it is one of those much needed facelifts. And it's coming at a very opportune time. Last little caveat here. I am very sad that persistent hangers looks like it's probably gonna miss 323 in my opinion.
You think it'll slip?
I think it'll slip. Yeah, unfortunately, because it's gonna require like OCS, PES. It's gonna require all that to be spot on, and I feel like there's so much like glitching with those systems right now that I don't know. There's a reason why they pushed it out. There's a reason why they pushed it away from 323 to 323X. And I don't know. I feel like it's going to be pushed to 4.0.
Wait, 323X? You mean which part?
So the persistent hangers, I thought the last release view, well, I thought I had it up. Give me 1 second. One of the release views said it was being pushed out, not for 323.0, but it was going to be either 0.1 or 0.x.
Really?
I thought.
I don't remember seeing that. That would be a big one. I'm looking at April 3rd. I'm only seeing vehicle modularity.
It wasn't April 3rd. I will hunt this down. I'm usually really fast at this. Stand by.
We got podcast listeners sitting in their car on the way to work, chomping at the bit, dude.
Yeah, they're like,
to send them careening off the road if this gets pushed out of 3. This is like the biggest This is the biggest part of 323. Besides the star map.
Yeah, stand by. So there's April 3rd. Was it March 20th? Stand by. Was it the unique item recovery?
Yeah, unique item recovery got pushed out.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking.
Okay, yeah,
just
that one,
just to make sure.
That one we know about that. Don't worry, everybody. Stop your nosebleeds.
People are gonna reach out to me like specifically about this now. Okay, so I might have gotten those combined where the unique item recovery was being pushed out.
Yeah, that's
there was like a whole subscriber flare conversation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Whew. Boy, about to cancel this whole podcast. But you do think that the freight elevators might end up getting pushed out still?
I do. I do. There's just a lot that rides on that loop. There's a lot that rides on it. Your inventory, again, I kind of relate it to like ship modularity. I feel like that's where you're going to be able to modify your ships in that way. So there's going to be modularity that needs to be rolled out. Again, PES has got to be strong. And I feel like that's a hit or miss sometimes. You know, like you put a rifle in your ship, you log out, log back in, that rifle is not your ship anymore sometimes. So I feel like a lot of that needs to get buttoned up before they just flat out release these persistent hangers or these the cargo elevators, in my opinion.
Opposing side of things then, what kind of surprise do you think they might still include in 323 or 323X?
Well, you know, it's funny. I was going to say modularity before it came out in this freaking update, because the March update mentioned a lot about modularity. I was not going to pin it on the Retaliator. I didn't think the Retaliator was going to bring it.
I made that call. That's one other thing that I can make the call for.
Put that feather in your hat.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think the modularity thing was already a surprise. I think we might get a couple more species of aliens because, like, you know, they're working on several more.
Yeah.
And there are lots of assets already created for Squadron 42. So, in my opinion, it'd be pretty easy to, you know, carry some of these over. But I'm not going to get into ship predicting. I'm done with that. I think I've done enough. Hopium comments for the two of us.
We got a couple of those on the record already.
Yeah. So
okay,
well, we're close though. We're close.
Okay. So you got your eyes set on what you expect in the PTU. Anything else you think is going to slip out besides possibly the freight elevators and stuff?
No. I think everything else is looking really good. And I had this up. Yeah, everything's looking really good. I don't see any reason to think any of these tentative items you see on the roadmap. I don't see them slipping out. I think we're in a good place for each one of them.
We got a roadmap roundup coming up this week.
We do.
I'm guessing a lot of these are going to get confirmed this week. And if there is any slippage, we'll probably hear about it. I think we're getting into that crunch time where they're pretty sure what's going to go, no go.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
Okay.
Because what you think is going to happen is not always the case.
Yeah.
Well, we know that to be true.
Final and probably most important question of this whole podcast. When is 323 going live?
Mid-May. I'm calling mid-May. So yeah, I'll be fast. So right now, wave 1 hit Wednesday, and we're still wave 1. We haven't really heard anything about wave 2 hitting, but they've done it before where they've launched multiple waves at once. So we can see 2 and 3 happening like this next week, maybe. But recently, I haven't redacted it yet. But recently they made mention like phase 5 was extended of Xenothreat was extended until 323 because of all the glitches they were having with the phase. And they made it sound like it's right around the corner. We're going to extend it for like another week when 323 launches. That's sort of the sentiment that I got. So
really?
Yeah, the way they talk about phase 5, we're going to extend it until 323. Well, that's not 4 weeks away. It's not going to be 4 weeks of phase 5. So they're probably closer than what I'm predicting. But I'm putting my hat down for like a mid-May, knowing Invictus launch week is the last 2 weeks of May.
Wonder if they're still going to try and aim for an April live release and then a mid-May 323.1 for Invictus.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
That's surprising that they would say something like that with the overdrive. So they actually indicated that the patch might be live in the next couple weeks. Yeah,
so I'll read it to you now. So in the announcements of Spectrum Overdrive Initiative Phase 5 update, it says, this is from Jake Acapella, we've been observing issues with the Phase 5 of Overdrive Initiative that became evident, yada, yada, yada. We're putting together a strike team to resolve these issues for the upcoming Alpha 323 update. To ensure there's ample time to complete Phase 5 with the fixes, we'll be extending this phase's completion date when 323 goes live.
Okay.
So just that kind of sentiment I'm reading is like, again, I can't imagine they're going to extend Phase 5 to like 4 additional weeks.
Yeah, it's definitely, right? This is like next 3 weeks this patch is going live. Whether it has all the features or not, that's the big thing, folks. They're going to go on date based. They need to have this patch in the game and then a stabilizing patch for Invictus Week. So they'll drop stuff out of the 323 initial patch if they need to, throw it in a 323.x, drop that before Invictus Week maybe, and call it a day. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So maybe 2 and 3, like waves 2 and 3 are live this week.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I can see
sounds
that.
like it. I mean, maybe they hold off on the replication layer separation again. It seems like that's the main thing causing problems. But also it could just be that that's catching the 30Ks and really there is something else causing 30Ks, but we'll see. Sounds like we'll probably get some more significant news on it this week.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right then, Sulyce. That's the show. This is a hefty one. We talked about 323. We did. Thank you so much for joining me, man.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you for being a good friend, a fellow podcast host in the community, for keeping the news flowing and for everything you've done to help us during the last couple months. It's appreciated. Before you go though, I want to give you one more time to throw that plug out there, let people know where they can find your own pod.
Sure. Yeah. So it's Beyond the Verse on all socials. It's BTV_cast. And I do video record my podcasts and make them available over on YouTube as well. That's /BTV_cast. And I'll have Space Tomato on. We're trying to figure out the details. Thursday, Friday, we don't know. But this next week he'll be on. He'll be on the show as well to have more conversations about the same. So, yeah, man, I appreciate the opportunity to plug, and it's always a blessing to be hosted here. So
cool, dude.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for watching on YouTube if you are. And if you're over on audio platforms, then you already know it is ad-free, supported by our supporters who are here live, listening with us, throwing in their own chats and questions. And you heard them reference throughout the video, throughout the pod. Yeah. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you all for watching. We really appreciate you. I will see you all next week for another good talk, Star Citizen, and supposed to be mostly other space games too, but it'll probably be Star Citizen. So I'll see you all next week.